Despite ending over 12 years ago, the show Avatar: The Last Airbender still maintains a relatively large and loyal fan base even today. This is partially due to the renewal and interest of the series after it's put on Netflix, but it's also just because of how good the show is. Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite animated show, and for good reason. It has an engaging overarching plot, phenomenal world building, fantastic fight scenes, but most importantly, it has memorable and well-developed characters. Picking a favorite Avatar episode is pretty hard, because there are so many great Avatar episodes. Episodes like Zuko Alone, Tales of Ba Sing Se, The Ember Island Players, and Sozin's Comet Part 4. But none of these episodes are my favorite. Instead, my favorite episode is the less talked about episode, that being Book 3, Episode 5, The Beach. So today, I'm going to talk about how the beach humanizes Avatar's villains. Generally, when you think of beach episodes in cartoons and animes, you think of filler episodes usually put in place to sell special beach edition action figures of the characters. Avatar even plays along with this assumption the audience might have, with Ty Lee and Zuko having this exchange in the first scene.
I'm so excited to spend the weekend on Ember Island. It's gonna be great to hang out on the beach and do nothing.
Doing nothing is a waste of time. We're being sent away on a forced vacation. I feel like a child.
The creators use Zuko's remarks as a sort of meta-commentary on the format of beach episodes, noting how they're, quote, a waste of time. One might assume this is just a one-off line of Zuko being Zuko, but as we'll later see, this line probably embodies the writer's philosophy towards beach episodes, hinting at this episode being more than meets the eye. So going back to our essential question, how does Avatar humanize our villains of Zuko, Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee in this episode? Well, the answer to that question is actually pretty simple. They remind us that at the end of the day, our villains are still just young teenagers, dealing with their own emotional and developmental problems. First, let's focus on that first part. The villains are still just young teenagers. As Aang said in the first episode when Zuko called him a child,
Well, you're just a teenager.
Well, we are constantly reminded that our protagonists are still children, and as such do childlike things. That rarely happens with Zuko and Azula. They are generally shown to be more mature and grown up than Team Avatar. The only time Zuko is really portrayed as a teenager before the beach is in Tales of Ba Sing Se, where he goes on a date with Jin, and is seen as a more vulnerable and awkward teen. Azula, however, is never really shown to be anything other than a tactical genius with deadly fighting skills. So that's why the beach is such a breath of fresh air. For what seems like the first time, we see our villain struggling with the mundane aspects of teenage culture. We see Zuko struggle to appease his girlfriend Mai, constantly trying to do nice things for her, like picking out seashells for her or getting her food or ice cream, but ultimately failing, as well as struggling with his own insecurities. We see Ty Lee get lots of attention from boys on the beach and on Ember Island, at first taking advantage of the attention, but eventually becoming overwhelmed by it. We see Mai struggle to care about anything, and finally, we see Azula struggling with grabbing the attention of boys with her being too intimidating.
That's a sharp outfit, Chan. Careful, you could puncture the hull of an Empire-class Fire Nation battleship, leaving thousands to drown at sea. Because it's so sharp.
Azula, for once in her life, is humble, admitting to Ty Lee she's jealous of her success with boys, and so asks for advice with boys. Ty Lee advises her to laugh at everything boys say, which Azula does, but she still comes off as too headstrong in the end.
Together, you and I will be the strongest couple in the entire world. We will dominate the Earth!
Zuko, meanwhile, gets in a fight with one of the guests at the party they're at, and storms off. The last third of this episode, however, is what takes it from being a really good episode to a great one. In the last third of the episode, Zuko, Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai finally show their emotions, with each of their confessions foreshadowing their arcs for the rest of the show. Zuko says that he's conflicted, and while he should be happy, he isn't. He's actually angry at himself. This foreshadows the rest of Zuko's arc in the show, as he'll come to realize that his true destiny and path in life is to teach Aang firebending and help him defeat his own father, the Fire Lord. Azula opens up and talks about how her and Zuko's mother saw her as a monster. She admits that her mother was right, but that it still hurts. This is one of the few times I personally feel bad for Azula, and like Zuko, her opening up also foreshadows the rest of her arc in the show. As we'll see in Sozin's Comet, the lack of approval she got from her mother eventually gets to Azula and causes her to become unhinged. Mai admits that while she doesn't care about much, she does care about Zuko, foreshadowing Mai's ultimate betrayal of Azula in order to save Zuko in the episode The Boiling Rock Part 2. Finally, Ty Lee talks about how she left to join the circus because she didn't like the feeling of being part of a match set with her 6 identical twins. Later, Ty Lee joins the Kyoshi Warriors, becoming again part of a match set. However, in the comic book Sisters, we learn that Ty Lee realizes that being in a match set isn't all that bad, as there is an advantage of being part of a team. And that with the Kyoshi Warriors, she can always take off her makeup anytime and be more of an individual when she wants. I would also add that I think Ty Lee becomes more confident in her identity by the end of the series, which allows her to join the Kyoshi Warriors while still having her unique identity. So I would say that the beach is really a turning point in the journey for the villains of Avatar. An episode that initially could be seen as a throwaway episode is actually crucial to the main arcs of our villains, especially Zuko and Azula. So that's how the beach humanizes our villains.